Greetings, greetings. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Conversations with Nicole, a special edition of Conversations with Nicole. April is Fair Housing Month, National Fair Housing Month. In fact, we are recognizing 55 years of the Fair Housing Act, the National Fair Housing Act. And so the city of Tallahassee, along with Wells Fargo and I believe it's Prime Meridian Bank, yes, are sponsoring a fair housing conference this coming Thursday. April 27th at the AC Hotel. And we'll give you a little bit more information about how you can find out more about that conference, which is absolutely free. But I have a special guest on with me today. He is a rattler. He is an expert in fair housing, all things fair housing, and I have known him for many years. But before I bring him on, I would love to hear from you all. Where are you tuning in from? If you would put your city and state in the comments so we can give you a shout out. I see my cousin Denise in Texas is here. Thank you for being here. So, fair housing is all about equal housing opportunities, regardless of your protected class, which we will talk about in just a few moments. But Mr. Dante Bonner is with the Florida Commission on Human Relations. And again, I've known him for years from when I was at Tallahassee Lenders Consortium and the work that we did back then as it relates to affordable housing and fair housing specifically. So I am going to read his bio before I bring him on, but tag a friend and let them know they need to be on here because there's probably something about fair housing that you don't know that you are going to learn today. So, Mr. Darren Dante Bonner is a graduate of the Florida A&M University's prestigious School of Business and Industry, also known as SBI, with a BS degree in business administration. He has over 24 years of experience in the field of civil rights and employment law. He has served the Florida Commission on Human Relations in various capacities during his 25-year career: customer service representative, mediator, investigator, and customer service intake manager. Currently, he serves as the educational outreach training coordinator for the agency, and he is responsible for providing education research for citizens in Florida and organizations throughout the state, as well as facilitating external and internal trainings. He has worked with local, state, national, and international organizations in conferences, workshops, and events to increase the awareness of civil rights and the audience's responsibility in their actions. He also holds credentials from the prestigious Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification. Mr. Bonner is committed to ensuring that all citizens and employees receive the highest level of knowledge and information to be effective and impactful within their community. His philosophy is that all people, regardless of gender, ethnicity, age, or belief system, should have the right to live peacefully amongst all individuals and to enjoy life to the utmost without being subjected to discrimination. Y'all help me welcome my friend, and yes, I'm calling him a friend, Dante Bonner.
Say good morning. It's been a day. Good afternoon. Hey, fam. How are you doing?
Yes, good to see you. Good to have you on here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about our conversations, and that's what's needed right now. Conversation. So if you're
Yeah.
online, grab a friend, grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your energy drink, depending on where you are. We're about to get into some good conversation here, and I'm excited.
Yes, yes. So my family is here. My cousin Tanya is here. She's in the DMV area, but we're glad to see you nonetheless.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Dante, let's get started by talking about what fair housing is. What does the act say? What does the Fair Housing Act say, and who does it protect?
Well, first of all, we are. the Fair Housing Act was actually established April 11, 1968. It was a signing by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Incidentally, it was signed 7 days after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. So, in response to the growing protests that were going on, this bill had actually been in legislature for almost 2 years. And then, as a result, it was moved forward and then it was signed. So, that's why we're celebrating National Fair Housing Month in the month of April, 55 years later. And the protected classes that even that you mentioned earlier in your broadcast, they are race, color, religion, national origin, sex, disability, and familial status. So, what that means is if you feel like you have suffered some type of unfair housing discrimination act based upon those specific housing characteristics or personal characteristics, excuse me, you can file a complaint of discrimination.
Okay. All right. So I think a lot of times people don't know what those protected classes are. And the one that I used to talk about when I taught the orientation class at my former employer was the familiar status one. So
Mhm.
can you just give a little bit of insight on what we mean when we talk about or what the act mean when it says familiar status? Who does that include?
Sure. When we're talking about familiar status, it's basically targeting those individuals for those that have children under the age of 18. So let me give you an example. If you were a parent that was trying to seek, let's say, an apartment, and because you have children, that you were precluded from actually receiving housing. That is a fair housing violation. It doesn't matter if they're your biological children, they could be your foster children. Even if you are pregnant, you are considered familial status. So the law does prevent individuals from limiting you from receiving any type of housing transaction because of your family status.
Okay, very good. All right. So just want to be clear, it's children under the age of 18 as well as expected moms. So definitely want to be mindful of that. All right. I see we have someone from Tallahassee here. Sea Paw Umbrella. Thank you for being here. All right. So Dante, what are some of the things that you are seeing over at the commission as it relates to fair housing that maybe we should be mindful of? What are maybe some of the types of housing discrimination that are more prevalent here in 2023?
Well, the interesting thing, it's been an emerging topic. Because of Fair Housing Month, I had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people across the state of Florida. And one of the emerging topics is actually in the area of disability. I think most people will be surprised to know that the number one protected characteristic that we see file complaint is actually disability. Disability almost doubles the number two basis of discrimination that is filed. One of the misnomers, as far as when you say the word discrimination, persons automatically think race. And
Mhm.
race is not the only type of discrimination, it's all those other particular factors. So, since disability is one of the number one characteristics that's being filed, the area that's really being covered is reasonable accommodations and emotional support animals. That's the number one issue, that persons are being denied housing, are being subjected to harassment because of an emotional support animal. And it's predicated on the fact because they have a disability, there is a need for an emotional support animal. The other trending that we're also starting to see in the agency is background checks. As we know, that incarceration is at a high, particularly with certain populations of our community. And as a result of that, persons who are coming out of jail, coming out of prisons, or just be having a record, they are having difficulty securing housing. And what the Federal Fair Housing Act is, particularly the governing body of HUD, which is Housing, Urban, and Development, they're making an intense focus on ensuring that just because a person may have suffered some type of misdemeanor or even a felony, they are still entitled to fair housing. And there's a criteria that housing providers do need to understand, that even if a person has some type of a record, depending upon what that record actually is and how long it was, you cannot use that against the individual so long as they are qualified for that housing to preclude them from getting housing to benefit them and their families.
Now that is interesting. Did not know that in terms of the disability and service animals being you know, what people are discriminating against. So, so can do
Let me break it down for you.
yeah, I
Let
was
me.
gonna say, can you talk about it, because
Oh
you know
yes, oh
I want
yes.
to hear
Let,
details.
let's talk. So, most of the time, you have a lot of housing providers are saying that number one, they don't want pets in their facilities for various different reasons. However, for an emotional support animal, it is not considered to be a pet. It is considered to be an extension of them because it's based upon a disability. So, if you're trying to secure housing in a no pet um, facility, the Fair Housing Act allows for a reasonable accommodation based upon that person's disability to allow that emotional support animal or ESA to be with them. And that housing provider does need to accommodate them in that. Number two, even for those places that do allow pets, but they may try to charge a pet fee. Well, because again, under the Fair Housing Act, they are not permitted to charge a pet fee for emotional support animals. So therefore, because they're suffering a harm for having to pay a fee, they're not allowed to do so. So, but most of it is just not allowing the emotional support animal to live with that individual. So that's the reason why the accommodation is not being granted. So that's why the complaint's being filed. One of the biggest challenges is the fact of defining what an emotional support animal is, because
Exactly.
there
Look,
is
look, hold on, because Kiosha is on it. I was just about to ask. She said, is it discriminatory to ask for a doctor's note confirming an emotional support animal is needed? So she took the words right out of my mouth.
so the answer is no.
Mm,
However, there is a context on which that information is presented. So, as a fair housing provider, if you have an emotional support animal and
mm,
you are letting where you're living, I need an accommodation for my emotional support animal. The housing provider does have the right to ask for a medical documentation to support the fact that that emotional support animal is needed. The
okay.
doctor's note does not have to explain what the actual disability is. And
Mm,
that's where some of the twisting gets placed. Number
okay.
two, there is no specific form for documentation for requesting an accommodation for emotional support animal. No one is required to submit any specific form. However, the law does state that your medical provider, that means the doctor that is treating you, must be able to provide some type of a documentation affirming that yes, they need this uh, uh, emotional support animal. And where a lot of the confusion comes into play is we all know persons are getting on the internet, you know, trying to get some little certificate saying this person has a support animal. That's not going to cut it. It has to be your treating physician, whatever their disability is, for them to actually receive the accommodation. So that kills a lot of those online companies. Paid $50, it will give you no, 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 no. The housing provider doesn't have to work and accept that particular documentation.
Huh. Boy, see, I learned something new, and I thought I knew everything there was about fair housing. Dante always comes with the new news. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for that question, Kiosha. So emotional support animals, yes, they are definitely on the horizons. I definitely have seen um support animals for folks that are visually impaired, but which there has been definitely an allowance for that, but emotional support, that is definitely a new area
Well,
of. Go ahead.
let me bring some context to that, because this is what I've been talking about, where a lot of the confusion takes place. There is
Mhm.
a difference between a service animal or service dog and an emotional support animal. So
Mhm.
that's the first thing we need to clear up,
Okay.
because a service animal can only be a dog or a miniature horse.
Oh, okay.
So, and if you can look under the Fair Housing Act, or you can look under Chapter 760 for verification as far as that is concerned. So, for a service animal, a dog or a miniature horse. So when
Okay.
you're seeing this going into stores and all the kind of, when you see those type of animals, that is a service animal supposedly. And not only does the Fair Housing Act cover that, but the Americans with Disability Act, or the ADA, covers that. So that's one separate thing. This is where the confusion comes into play. Emotional support animals are not covered by the ADA. They're only applicable for fair housing issues. I'm going to say that again for those in the back. Emotional support animals are not covered by the ADA. They're only applicable for housing. And what is happening is people are interchanging service animals and emotional animals, interchanging those titles, and that's not accurate.
Well,
So if you have, and I'm about to step in it, but I can stand on it. So
okay.
if you have any type of animal aside from a dog out in restaurants or stores or anything along those lines, those are not service animals and are not covered by the ADA. If you say your animal is an emotional support animal, it can only apply to housing.
Okay. All right. Listen, we got some comments and some questions. So let me I found out who Sopa Umbrella is. That's Frank Hill. Thank you for being on here, my brother. He said, I recently met a woman in my neighborhood who was formerly homeless. She doesn't own a home but has secured a rental unit in an apartment. Not sure if she has benefited from the Fair Housing Act. I found that many people who find housing have difficulty with sustaining that housing for a long period of time, and particularly have difficulty with utility bills. What can people do? So I think that's another issue, Frankel, and I can provide you some resources after this live regarding utility assistance. Okay.
Right.
All right. Keosha says to clarify, as a landlord, which I am, if I have a no pet policy from renters and they require a service animal or emotional support animal, it is discriminatory for me not to rent to them.
Unfortunately, that is correct. However, I have to put some disclaimers on there. Number one, you can require documentation from that person's provider. The other issue is, and this is something we do recognize, but there is case law that supports this, is the fact that you have a lot of housing providers who said that their insurance does not allow them to have animals or pets on the premises, which is why they have a no pet policy. And I totally get it and I totally understand. However, the Fair Housing Act does not recognize that. And there has actually been case law. As long as that is an emotional support animal, it can be supported that there is a need for it. That housing provider does have to provide that. Now, with that said, it means that you're allowed to be with you. So if there is damage, if that animal does something to other individuals, that tries to bite or damage the property, you as a landlord do have the right to penalize them, because they're supposed to have control of their animal. And that doesn't allowing them to live with you does not preclude them. They can just do anything that they want to do. So I don't want housing providers to feel like they're being helpless. And also keep in mind, the only reason why they're there is because it's supposed to assist with their disability. So it's not like you're going to have five, if you have a rental unit of 100 properties, you're going to have 100 people, requesting a reasonable accommodation. That's not going to happen. So if you see or if an individual, another tenant sees a person with an animal, then they're going to know that, okay, that has to be because of a disability. It's just not because it's, Fluffy is one of my, favorite animals and it's part of the family. And that may be part of your family. However, the law is very clear as far as, yes, you have to allow that. And that's why it's called a reasonable accommodation, because
Gotcha.
it's going outside of the norm, for that. And so that also protects you as a housing provider. So when somebody says, well, hey, why do they get to have an animal and I can't? Well, they have an accommodation, and that's that.
Okay. All right. Wow.
That's one
Again.
of those. That's one of those sticky ones. It really is. We had a day at the Capitol earlier this month, doing Fair Housing Month, and I had the same exact conversation. The gentleman was honestly frustrated, and until this is where you need your local Congress, you need your state legislature to really be involved to help merge the two. As far as the federal housing law is the standard. So the insurance companies have got to get on board, because here's the thing: what people don't understand. If a fair housing complaint is filed, not only can that complaint be filed against the owner of the housing facility, but the insurance company can also have the complaint against them, because they are forcing the housing provider to discriminate against an individual with a disability for that ESA.
Okay. Wow. Um, yeah. Look, everybody's saying wow. Wow.
And now do you see why now do you see why this is an emerging topic? Because of the lack of understanding and information. And this is why we have to have the conversation. Because what's happening is there are too many people that have been abusing this. They have been going online because they just want their animal, to have, to be with them. And also there's this thing of, and I don't want to call out a specific system. Oh, they feel like they're going through something, so they just have to have what they consider to be emotional an animal, and they just want to have it. But there's still things that they have to do themselves. If it truly is, they got to have a treating physician. One of the things I've also said was, you just can't get any doctor. So let's say if you have anxiety, and that is truly a documented medical disability that you're suffering with, you cannot go to your foot doctor and ask for them to give you a note identifying that you have a disability. If you have a medical condition, your physician who is treating your medical physician must be the doctor to say, yes, there is a need for that specific emotional animal.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. Again, a lot of great information. As Kiosha said, yes, lots of education needed on this topic, which is, again, why we are bringing it to you. So, we do have this this conference coming up on Thursday. And let me pause because Tanya is asking, can a landlord require quarterly deep cleaning of carpets in space?
They can only require that if they are requiring that for everyone. Because if you're not, then you are specifically targeting that individual because of their emotional support animal, which is their disability, which is a fair housing violation. You have to think of it like this. If you're not going to apply to everybody as far as a rule or a guideline, then you cannot do it.
Okay. So everybody or nobody except for those that have a particular accommodation.
You're correct. Now that's actually not a bad idea as far as if you want to keep your carpet clean, hey, put it in the lease for everybody to keep their carpet clean. So because we know as landlords, and we understand the frustration because like when the lease is over, they see all the marks and the damages and sometimes, but you still have the same options. It would be no different if that person didn't have an ESA and you have a tenant that was just a horrible tenant. They weren't clean, they were nasty, they did all kind of stuff. And that little security deposit that you had was not going to cover what all the damages that you incurred. You still have a right within that lease because most leases do have that if you have extra incurring damages to go after them. You still have that same right. Having an emotional support animal does not give them carte blanche just to do anything and everything. It is just supposed to be just that they're present to assist them. It's basically supposed to be like you see them but don't see them. That's how a true emotional support animal has done. And what we can't do, we can't have our own biases, concerning, well, I don't like animals, I don't like pets. We can't push that on them because there is an actual need for them. And again, what's got it twisted are all those individuals who have abused this system. So, and I understand what's like, you know what, since I can't tell the difference, cut it out. Fair Housing Act says, no. It's nuance.
Yep. Can't do that. It's nuance, as you said, indeed. So 55 years of the Fair Housing Act, and I know it's taken a lot of kind of twists and turns as we see new laws or policies being added. Now, I know that there are some municipalities also that add layering to the Fair Housing Act. Have you experienced that?
Well, one of the things, the Fair Housing Act is the bottom.
Right.
Okay, so, and the interesting thing about the Federal Fair Housing Act is every state does not have a state law that matches that. So there are some states that it's only the federal law. And then some states like our state in Florida, we have a federal and state law that mirrors the two. However, certain municipalities, they may want to extend it even further. However, if there is an alleged violation of an area that's not covered, it won't be covered under the federal or state act. It would only be covered under that local municipality. So whatever limited damages that you can receive because of that specific coverage, then that's where you can start. I'll give you an example. The state of California has over 21 issues or bases, that a person can file under its state law. So, for an example, immigration status is one of their state laws. Now, they couldn't file a federal housing complaint, but under their state, they could, as far as they could only do, but it's limited. They could not go to federal court because that's not a protected basis. But under their state law would govern that. Or if it's a municipality, would that particular local region be able, to be able to do that as well? So that's why most of the time, most municipalities won't try to add an additional basis because there's only so much they could do remedy-wise. Otherwise, the remedy may be just mediation or just trying to make a person whole. But as far as legal wise, they won't have an avenue to go to because the courts don't have jurisdiction of a basis that is not part of that statute.
Gotcha. So I'm gonna have you repeat this real quick. So on a national, a federal level, what are and you're calling them now, what do you call
the protected basis or protected characteristics? Yeah,
I'm so used to calling them protected classes, but evidently our language has changed.
No, I use it all. Depending on who you're talking to, it's protected class, protected basis, protected characteristics. Whatever you can understand and receive, those are the words that we use. Those are all interchangeable.
Okay, gotcha. So tell me what they are.
I'm going to break it down. Race, and when we're talking about race, we're talking about black, white, Asian, Native American, Pacific Islander, under that classification. When we're talking about color, we're talking about the hue, light skin, dark skin. When we're talking about religion, we're talking about any sincere held belief, whether it's the traditional view of Catholicism or a denomination of Baptist, Episcopalian, Pentecostal. It also is the non-traditional ones as well. Tree hugging, Satanism. If it's if it's a sincere held belief, that is protected. You also have national origin. That means the ethnicity, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Jewish, whether it's Hispanic, your sex, male, female. Also, sexual orientation is also covered under that premise. Gender identity and transgender is also protected under sex discrimination. Disability, whether it's physical or mental, or being treated as though you have a disability. And then the last one we spoke about earlier is familial status, having persons under the age of 18. And while we're on with my familial status, there is a misunderstanding also that, especially within the last 10 years, we've had a lot of transgenerational persons living together, grandparents, aunts and uncles, as well as the parents and the children. If you are caring for someone who was elderly, that, as far as discriminatory person, is not covered. It's only in reference to children under the age of 18.
Okay. Good to know. And so let me just pause. I do have a question as relates to those protected bases that you mentioned. But for those of you who may be just joining us, I am on with Mr. Dante Bonner with the Florida Commission on Human Relations, and we are talking about fair housing, the Fair Housing Act. April is Fair Housing Month. The National Fair Housing Act was put in place some 55 years ago. So 2023 marks 55 years of the Fair Housing Act. So I want to thank all of you for being here, as well as our guest, Mr. Dante Bonner. So Dante, you mentioned sex, and you also mentioned that sexual orientation is listed under sex, which federally, that was not the case when I was last in this arena. So, federally, they expanded that.
Yes, back in 2020, the Supreme Court case,
Okay.
Bostock versus Clayton, made it clear that sexual orientation is a type of sex discrimination. So as a result of that, it was put under that same umbrella. And up until that particular time, that was one of those bases where, depending upon where you lived, you were only able to get a limited level of relief. Again, I'll use as an example, probably about 15 to 20 states in their state law had sexual orientation being protected, but it was not covered federally. So again, if a person felt like they were denied housing because of their sexual orientation, they couldn't file it under federal law. They would have to file it under their state law. However, you had one state circuit saying, no, it is not protected. The other one is protected. So it had to go to the Supreme Court to say, hey, is this a protected class? And they said, yes, it was.
Okay. Very good. Interesting. All right. So Miss Lynn Jones is here, who is here in Tallahassee. She said many apartment complexes are taking the liberty to raise rent to $500 plus within 2 years. Is that legal?
I'm sorry to say this, but the answer is yes, it is. While our agency does not oversee that type of handling as far as rent increases, as far as affordable housing is concerned, what we will look at is, although rent, and this is going not just within our city, not just within our state, but all over the country, rent is increasing. However, what we would look at is if persons are being targeted because of their protected basis or protected class. So if you are a woman and you're being charged $500 more than someone else, and you feel like it's because of you being a woman, That would be something that we would look into as far as why are you being treated differently from this other individual? And we would do an investigation for that. But just the aspect of rent being increased, it is supply and demand. The renters, the housing providers do have the right to set any price that they want to. And until persons stop renting and there's a bunch of vacancies, that's the only way that unfortunately, or the heart of the housing provider changes. That's the only thing that's going to change that. And it's an unfortunate thing, and we realize that. But when you're talking about fair housing discrimination, it is very narrow in terms of, did the action take place because of who you are, or was it just unfair? Because again, there is a difference in being unethical, being immoral, being unfair versus being unlawful. The law does not look at right or wrong as far as feelings or emotions. And for your listening audience, Nicole, I really want to stop here because there is an emotional attachment when you're talking about your home.
Yeah.
Your home is your castle. If you don't have peace anywhere else, that's where you're supposed to find home. So when it is disrupted because you can't afford, because the cost of living things are going up, stress levels high, we recognize the fact that this is an emotional issue. So therefore, when complaints are being filed, they are being filed because they've been genuinely hurt. But our agency has to look at the fact of, was it because of those characteristics or those bases and not for any other reason? And that's where we have the anger, they have the frustration, because we're neutral. It doesn't benefit us that we find a cause or no cause. We want to just get to the bottom of, why did it happen? Because a lot of times things are happening because there's no communication on things that are going on. Now, to be fair, let's not ignore the fact that there are persons, there are characters out there that are doing things intentionally because of who they are. So that's the reason why the Fair Housing Act is taking place. Another point that I want to highlight that you made mention at the top of the beginning, this is the 55th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act. Most of our parents were alive. They were little children so that means our grandparents, depending on the community that were actually engaged in discriminatory action. So I want persons to understand, this wasn't something that happened in the 1300s or the 1400s, the 15. We're not even talking about 100 years ago. This is within one generation, one generation where it was legal. And when we're talking about discriminatory, we're talking about redlining, where depending upon your race, whether you're a minority, whether you were Black, or even you could not live in certain parts of the city. And to prove that, look where you live. You can tell where certain individuals live versus other individuals live. And I'm going to leave that right there. Okay.
So does your office get into any of that, like the redlining and whatnot? Because that's still going on today.
What we will take the complaint in, but because of the complexity of those cases, we will pass that up to HUD, which is the Housing, Urban and Development, and then they would take on that case. It's still illegal. It's still unlawful. So we may take that complaint, see, is it something that, do we have the resources to investigate? If not, we'll pass it on to HUD.
Okay, very good. Now you mentioned so I want to go back to Lynn's question about, the raising of the rent, and your example was, if my rent was a different price because of one of these, what do we call them? Protected bases. Yes. You see me looking at my
use your word, basis.
Because of one of the protected bases, what are some of the things that can be done to try to prove that?
Well, the first thing you got to do, you have to file a complaint. You have to file an inquiry to say, hey, this is what happened to me, and this is the reason why. You would fill out a questionnaire form. The questionnaire form basically spells out the who, what, when, where, how, why. One of our intake staff individuals will talk with you after they receive that complaint to make sure is it timely, make sure we have the authority to investigate that complaint. Then you have to fill out sign a charge form attesting to the fact, yes, these are the allegations that I am raising against these individuals. Then it's given to an investigator. The investigator is going to get in contact with the housing provider and require a response to those allegations. They're going to be required to provide documentation to support why did you treat the respondent in the manner in which you did, and was it discriminatory or not? Mm-hmm. Then after they get that information, you that filed the complaint, it's now on you. Where is your documentation? Where's your supportive information? Where are your witnesses? It can't just be a matter, I just have a feeling. Your feelings are not going to be supportive information.
Yeah.
Now, if you can name people, they treated Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, and Mike and Ralph differently, and my name is Sophia. So, okay, that's supportive information. Then our investigator would do follow-ups, on that. They would do interviews to trust the credibility, how detailed in your information you're going, persons that, they're in a different place, we're in the same location, and, that we were talking, and I was at the laundromat, and they told me that, they were charging me this much, and Ronnie told me this, and then Ricky told me this, and I'm like, wait a minute, we all came at the same time. That's the type of information that we're talking about, because we understand that everything is not always documents per se. Right. So, but when you give the information to the investigator on as much as the investigator does have the authority to demand the housing provider, hey, give me this documentation, provide this information. And it's in their best interest to supply that information, because if you don't, it's going to look more so for the complainant than it will for the respondent. So that's the information and how we go about conducting our investigations.
Okay. So Lynn mentioned that in 1968, redlining in my community, a physical sign was in place. This location was designated for Negroes.
Then it was a clear fair housing violation, and someone would have needed to have filed a complaint. And the interesting thing is that is the reason why we're here having this type of conversation, because people don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And persons know something has happened to them, but I just don't know what to do. And so that's why we're really taking concerted efforts to have this fair housing conference that we have coming up on Thursday, that we're inviting all of the listeners. If you're here in the Big Bend, Tallahassee, Florida area, you need to register and sign up and come get this information. And then also you can, if you're not in Tallahassee, I would encourage you to go to HUD.gov to be able to find out what's the regional area that you can get this information from. So that way you can find out what your rights are.
Yes. So I appreciate that you said we don't know what we don't know, because oftentimes maybe there is some discrimination or prejudice or bias that's taking place. And we may be just thinking, oh, that person is just a jerk, or, something like that, and not know that we do have rights, that we are part of a protected class or protected basis.
It's the same thing. And you're actually right. And because of the fact too, and I really want to encourage our listeners too, because a lot of times too, people feel a sense of despair. They ain't gonna do anything. Why should I, do this, type of thing. But here's the thing. The purpose for the investigation is to get to the bottom of what may have happened. I would rather know, even if I don't agree with the decision, I have a report outlining what happened to me, even if I disagree with it, versus always in my head, well, I don't know, well, maybe so, and everything. Because here's the thing also, there is something that is called conciliation. It's a fancy term for mediation. And what happens is, once a fair housing complaint has been filed, there are plenty of opportunities throughout that investigation to say, hey, We acknowledge the fact that complaint's been filed, but how can we resolve this? And sometimes it's just a matter of a conversation. We have a neutral conciliator here working for our agency that gets in contact with both parties that say, how can this be resolved? Some of it is a matter of just give me my deposit and I'm good to go. Some of it is if you allow my ESA to come into play. Some of it is, I need whatever it is to make me whole. And then you can resolve the complaint. Complaint is closed. It's a win-win situation for parties. And that's something we actually promote. We want a win-win situation because, again, complainant is angry, emotions, respondent is angry. They don't think they did anything wrong. And sometimes the conciliation helps the meeting of the minds. Yeah. And it's not a matter of guilt or innocence. It's how can we resolve this without the complaint continuing forward? And even if you found at the beginning, I don't want to hear them, I don't want to listen to what they got to say, I want justice. And then halfway into the investigation, because the information, you kind of calm down a little bit, and then respondent kind of calls out, well, maybe we can try to work it out. We're all for it.
Indeed, definitely would like to try to work it out as opposed to going to court, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes. All right, so we are about 3/4 into our conversation, but I want to talk about this event coming up on Thursday. So yes. It's the Big Bend Fair Housing Conference from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the AC Hotel located at 801 South Gadsden Street here in Tallahassee, Florida. It's a free event. It will include 4 panel discussions with local and national leaders and subject matter experts that will tackle topics ranging from housing rights to preventing housing discrimination. So, Dante, what's your role in this event on Thursday?
Well, this year I was on the planning committee organizing all of the events this year. And so our agency, the Florida Commission on Relations, we partner with the Corporation for Community Economic Development United under the leadership of Dr. Patricia McGill. And we work along with the city of Tallahassee, Gadsden County, Leon County, all different Habitat for Humanity, all the housing providers, Tallahassee Lender Consortium and such others in this Big Bend area. And every year we commemorate Fair Housing Month by putting on this conference to educate all persons, whether you are the person that's trying to get housing, and for those that are in the housing providing market, those apartment complexes, those builders, those realtors. This is across the board for everybody to be educated. Again, I say it all the time. You don't know what you don't know. And even when you think you know, you still don't know. So this is an opportunity for us. We partner together. We put on this wonderful conference. We bring in fresh mindset to give an understanding on some things that you may not be aware of. We talk about some of the upcoming trends and things that are going on in the country at this particular time and in the region. So this is a way for us to educate the public, if you will, on what's going on in fair housing and how you can empower yourself moving forward.
Indeed. So who was this conference for?
Everybody.
Everybody.
So yes, I'm going to break it down from everybody. But everybody. So if you're a person that lives in an apartment, you're trying to acquire a home, you're trying to buy land, you're trying to get a mortgage. On the other side, if you're a realtor, you're a broker, you're a banker, you're a financier, you are a housing builder, you're a housing provider, if you own complexes, if you own if you own vacation properties, you also fall under the Fair Housing Act. So you're not exempt as well. So this is for everybody to be educated. Well, you know what? I don't care about that. If you're a college student, you need to know this stuff. You need to come out and be educated. So when it's time for you to get out of the bubble of college world experiences and start getting into this world of fair housing, you'll be empowered to know what to do. So when I say everybody, it's everybody. And we're not shooting darts or arrows. No one has to feel like, we're pro-complaining or we're pro-respondent. No. We're pro-educating.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we want everyone to understand. It's for everybody because we have to all live together. And we
Yep.
have to make sure we're in a place where everyone is safe, comfortable, and that you're able to get what you're supposed to have without any type of obstacles that other institutions are placing on individuals.
Indeed, indeed. Well said. So the link to register is scrolling at the bottom of the screen, which is talgov.com/neighborhood services /fair housing. It is absolutely free. Lunch will be provided. Again, it starts at 9 a.m. and there are several, again, state and national speakers that will be coming before us to talk about fair and affordable housing. We have Marvin Nesbitt, the Senior Director of Community Development in Atlanta, Georgia, Sean Duncan with D-Men, Director of Training and Consulting. We also have a session with Tasha Carter from the Florida Insurance Consumer Advocate, what you should know about homeowners and renters insurance. We also have a session on financing affordable housing to promote equitable lending from a legal and policy director, Cody Gazab, who I believe is with the Florida Housing Coalition. And then we do have a session on advancing housing protections for survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, and sexual assault and stalking, a panel discussion. So it's going to be
Thick,
full,
rich.
full. Lots to hear and talk about. And so I will be moderating that event on Thursday from 9 to 5 here at the AC Hotel right here on Gadsden Street, 801 South Gadsden Street. Again, the link or the website to register is scrolling at the bottom of the screen, so I invite you all to do so, if you are here in the Tallahassee area, because it is gonna be full of information.
Yes, and to piggyback off of that, I want to encourage you. You may not be able to attend the entire day. I still want to encourage you to go to the link listed on the banner. Look at the itinerary. Look at the particular topics. If you may not be able to extend, but maybe 3 or 4 hours, come to that to get that particular information. There may be one of those particular sessions that we're talking about. The financing affordable housing to promote equitable lending. That may be what you just want to hear. Come and just hear that. If you can't stay the whole day, you don't have to stay the whole day if your schedule does not permit you to do so, but the information is here and we want you to have it. We strongly encourage you. We're inviting you. This is a wonderful opportunity for the citizens of Tallahassee and the Big Bend area to get this rich information. We are honored to have these individuals here to be able to get them all at one time. They're taking time out of their busy schedule to share this information, and it doesn't cost you anything but to get in your car and to drive over to the AC Hotel. And if you stay long enough, we'll feed you as well. And so you can't beat free and a meal.
Indeed, and a lot of great information. Yes. So Dante, how can folks connect with you?
Well, if they want to connect with me, first of all, if you want to file a complaint, you can just go to our website, and our website is fchr.myflorida, which is all one word, .com. So that's if you want to file a complaint. If you want to reach me directly, you can reach me with my name, Dante.Bonner at fchr.myflorida.com. And that's DA, not DO, DANTE.BONNER at fchr.myflorida.com. Now, I cannot offer you legal counsel or advice. I only sleep at a Red Roof Inn. I am not an attorney. So, and if you want to invite me to be able to conduct trainings, that's what we're here for. Contact me. If you can't get a hold of me, Miss Nicole Everett, and you can definitely reach her, and she would actually send you the information and connect us together. We are here from you, and we cover the entire state of Florida from Key West to Pensacola. I had the privilege to have an interview this morning with the listening audience at Pensacola, Florida. So shout out to all the Nicole Everett listeners in the Escambia County, Pensacola area. So we are here for you. This is a wonderful platform that not only the Dr. McGill and all of the partners that are working together to make this a success. This is something we're passionate about. And especially during this particular time, we want to empower you with information. So we can't stress it enough. You know, take a little time out of your busy schedule. You will not be disappointed. You will not be disappointed. And I guarantee you, you're going to find out something that you didn't know, and you're going to share that with someone, and you're going to share that with someone, and you're going to share that with someone. And then you see how fast people have gotten educated just on that one little small thing. Now imagine if all of your listening audience comes and shares that information. We're going to be that much better to have that equitable, fair housing that we're all desiring to have.
Absolutely. So Keosha said, thank you for sharing that we don't have to stay the whole day, Dante. Indeed, indeed, indeed. All right. So again, that link to register is scrolling at the bottom of the screen. You go to the talgov.com website. If you can't remember all of the slashes, just go to talgov and type in fair housing, and it will pop right on up. Yep, it'll pop right on up. So we got a few more minutes. I'm going to ask for any final questions or comments. I hope this has been beneficial to my viewers today. If it has, then let me know by putting a thumbs up or give us a hand clap or a heart or something in the comments. Let us know if it has been helpful to you today. Dante, I want to give you an opportunity to give some closing remarks as well.
Well, first of all, I want to thank, Dr. Patricia McGill. I can't stress enough, and working with her for the last several years, and all the partnerships, the City of Tallahassee, Wells Fargo, all of the other participants of this coalition, the Big Pain Alliance, as I like to call it, and also you as well, Nicole. You've been right there with us. This is a joint effort. There are no big I's or little U's, and we need your help, but we need you. We need you, the listening audience. We need you to come. We're preparing all this great food. We got this meal prepared, and we just need you to come and participate and join us. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. So I'm going to be looking for you. I'm going to look for you. I'm going to look for you. Don't disappoint me.
Indeed.
Hope to see you on Thursday.
Indeed. And the food is not just the physical food, but it's the information. That's food as well. So all right. So thank you, Frank Hill, for being here. He said it was certainly meaningful. We'll share the important information and pass it on. Thank you, Patricia Griffin. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Good deal. All right. Well, we expect to see y'all on Thursday.
Yes, sir.
AC Hotel. All right. All right, good people.
Hotel.
Yeah, AC. We'll come up with a fair housing dance, a fair housing line dance. How about that?
That's how we do. That's how we do. Laughter is always good, like a medicine. So in tough times like this, you still have to be able to laugh, but because the joy is the physical and the emotional, spiritual nourishment that you're going to get with this information. And it's not going to stop. So come on out and join us.
Come on out and join us. All right, Dante, we're going to sign off. Good people, we will see y'all on Thursday.
See you on Thursday.
All right.
Thank you.